Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the SportzMoose Media Podcast for the week. Ricky Dean, along with Rick Burkett, on the phone with me this afternoon as we get set to talk about high school football in the area, primarily Southwest Alabama, and very much so concentrating on Monroe County and Escambia County, Alabama. As a lot of these teams now, Rick, after we get halfway through the season, and we're now in week 6, so most teams having 4 to 5 games left on their season, and so all these regions, especially the regions that we're going to be touching on primarily today, are the regions Region 1 in 7A all the way down through 1A in the Alabama High School Athletic Association. A lot of big games this weekend as these upper-level teams that are vying for spots, playoff spots, and you've got to finish in the top 4 in your respective region to make the playoffs. All these teams are now, they're really going to start playing each other and knocking each other off.
Yeah, and glad to be with you this afternoon, Ricky. It's just what we covered a couple of weeks ago. We said that they would be getting into the meat of their schedule here at this time of year, and we're kind of in the middle of football season, high school and college, and these next few games will decide who your playoff contenders are for sure, in at least in our regions, in the Region 1 regions. And it's a bunch of good games this weekend, so looking forward to it. Of course, looking forward to our game especially.
Yeah. No doubt about it. I mean, there's some big games all up and down the schedule, and we're going to touch on a few of those as we work our way. And just like we always do, you know, we're going to start in Monroe County, Alabama, and we're going to talk to begin with about J.F. Shields, the J.F. Shields Panthers. And I tell you one thing, you know, J.F. Shields has had a tough road to hoe this year. They're 0-6 at the time, and they're just coming off a beatdown. They ended up taking on Leroy last week, got beat by them 46-8. And if you look at poor J.F. Shields, the Panther schedule doesn't get any easier because this week they host 6-1 Milry, who is 3-0 in their region. And Milry, after losing their opening game of the year to Centronale by a score of 27-26, they have knocked off 6 opponents in a row. They've played 6 in a row since losing. They've won 6 games in a row. They're 6-1, and so J.F. Shields is going to have a tough one this week as they go to Milry to Wildcat Hill to play this Friday night.
Yeah, that's right. I tell you what, I mean, talk about bad luck. I mean, J.F. Shields are in a tough region to start with, and then to wind up with Georgiana, Leroy, and Milry all back to back to back. And then it's Southern Choctaw after that. So Milry's a good team. They've only lost one game to Centronale, which is a much larger school than Milry. And Milry located up in North Washington County there, and I mean they really turned into a powerhouse. They just barely lost that game on the first game of the season to, like I said, a much larger school in Centronale. So it's going to be tough for J.F. Shields this Friday night, but that's what you play the game for, as they say.
That's right. Well, you know, good luck to the Panthers, but it's going to be a tough road to hoe for them as they go to Milry. As we travel over still in Monroe County, head over toward Monroe County High. And, you know, I've talked very fondly of the coaching staff and particularly the head coach at Monroe County this year, Coach Shannon Felder. And I believe he's got the Tigers kind of moving in the right direction. You know, they're headed in kind of an upward trend, even though you really can't tell it by the record. The record right now, 1-5. They're coming off a loss to Excel this past week. In-county rivalry. Excel beat them by a score of 46-0, but it really doesn't. You know, this is going to be an interesting game right here because this is a Class 3A Region 1 ball game between Monroe County and Hillcrest Evergreen. Hillcrest Evergreen, we've seen them a couple of times, and Hillcrest Evergreen is really no indication of their record as to what this team is capable of. They're 0-4 in the region, 0-6 on the year. They lost last week to Mobile Christian who doesn't, by a score of 42-0. But I tell you, this is going to be an interesting contest between two teams in Class 3A Region 1 that are desperately needing a win right now.
Yeah, that's right. We covered both teams, and one of them twice. And I'm telling you, both teams, you hear announcers on TV talk about sort of passing the eye test. Monroe County has got a pretty good football team. I mean, and it may not sound like it was only one win, but they've been competitive in their games, and they never give up. We watched them against Escambia County High School in Atmore, and watched them against WSNL. They play decent football. And we know Evergreen has played just a killer schedule, and we talked about that earlier this year about how tough these Region 1s, regardless of the division they were in as far as the classification, are. There's a lot of good football, and I've seen Monroe and Hillcrest both play good football. So you're right; it's an interesting matchup this Friday night, and the best of luck to both teams.
Yeah, that'll be a good one. It'll be played at Hillcrest Evergreen. That game is scheduled for Friday night at 7 o'clock. As we move on down from Monroe County High, we move down Highway 21 just a piece, about a rock's throw, and we get to Monroe Academy. The Volunteers at 2-6 on the year. They lost to Glenwood School this past week, and of course Glenwood is the number one AISA school in any division. They're ranked number one. They're undefeated on the year. They beat Monroe Academy last week by a score of 48-13. Monroe Academy is at Morgan Academy in Selma. Morgan Academy is 1-6. They lost to Autauga Academy this past week 49-0. So that's going to be another one. Monroe Academy, they're having a down year, but this will be an opportunity for them to hopefully get to 3-6. Morgan Academy is certainly beatable, and the Volunteers will just have to put a good game together, and hopefully, matter of fact, I was doing some research about the different schools in the area. I saw a thing where I believe I read, if I've read the article correctly, coming out of the Monroe Journal, that the JV team or it's either junior high or JV in AISA, they have a state championship kind of a playoff thing for them, and I believe that Monroe Academy's JV team is playing for the state title. They're going to play for the state title in junior high football.
Oh, yeah, well, good for them, and that's a pretty good forecast for years to come if you can hang on to them. High school's gotten almost as bad as the transfer portal in college levels these days, people swapping schools. But we hope Coach Felder is able to hang on to those athletes and get them up there. And this Friday night, I think Monroe's got a pretty good chance to come away with the W against Morgan. It's just an off year for them.
Yeah, well, hopefully Monroe Academy will be able to right the ship against Morgan Academy, and that game is going to be played in Selma. As we look at Class 3A Region 1, of course, that's the region that we're most familiar with because we've got, the W.S. Neal Blue Eagles play in Class 3A Region 1, so we get to see all these teams that we mentioned. Now, the XL Panthers, they're 3-3 on the year. They beat Monroe County this past week 46-0. They've got a tough one too. XL at 3-3. They travel to Thomasville. Thomasville beat Flomaton this past week 21-7. A very good Flomaton team that we will get an opportunity to see Friday night. But that's going to be a tough one at Thomasville for XL. And Thomasville, we've talked about it. Of course, Mobile Christian seems to be the class of 3A Region 1. Thomasville's right up there. Got to be if that's going to be an interesting game between those two teams when that comes. But Thomasville definitely solid, probably at that number 2 spot.
Oh yeah, I'm in agreement with that. Thomasville's got a good football team, and we'll be able to watch them too in a couple of weeks, or at least they meet on the 27th. Does Thomasville and Mobile Christian, but take it one game at a time. And this week they got XL. XL stumbled a little bit out of the gate, but they're coming off a couple pretty impressive victories. Monroe County, they're did not allow them to score, and we know that Monroe County offense can score. So then they beat J.U. Blacksher. J.U. Blacksher's got a pretty good squad. They held Flomaton. They lost by one touchdown to Flomaton. So Excel's got a pretty good team, but it's probably a little much to ask them to go into Thomasville. Thomasville has just got a juggernaut of a team this year.
Yeah, and it's just going to be a tough road to hoe over there. Anytime you got to go across the river over there and play at Thomasville, it's going to be a tough game. That place will be packed on Friday night, and with those Thomasville Tigers winning the way they are, everybody's going to be excited, and they won't be excited to see Excel coming over there to play.
Yeah, that's right.
As we continue in Monroe County, 2A Region 1 now, J.U. Blacksher at 3-4. J.U. Blacksher kind of threw us a curve. I was really expecting some big things out of J.U. Blacksher. They jumped off just right out of the gate and were 3-0. They've lost 4 straight ball games. They last lost to McKenzie, who's got a very good squad. McKenzie beat them 38-16 on J.U. Blacksher's homecoming at home. Now, here's something that's interesting about the upcoming opponent for J.U. Blacksher. J.U. Blacksher travels to Grove Hill Friday night to take on Clark County. Clark County is 2-4, which sounds like, okay, well, this ought to be a game that Blacksher can win. The problem is that they're 2-0 in the region is Clark County. They beat Chickasaw 40-0. And then they lost their 4 losses that they have on the season. They lost to Sweetwater, Leroy, Strawn, who is 5-1 in Class 3A, and to the Millry Wildcats. So, Clark County, even at 2-4, that's a good football team. That's one of those you don't judge the book by its cover, because the cover will lie to you. That's a good football team right there at Clark County.
Man, that's right. A lot of teams started off the year with some easier schedules and finished with harder schedules. And some schools, like Evergreen, for instance, in Clark County, they started off with a really hard schedule, and it gets a little easier on the back end. At Clark County sure fits that bill. J.U. Blacksher still got a chance. So, I think they're fairly evenly matched. And I think J.U. Blacksher's got a chance. But, yeah, you can't go by Clark County's record. And really, as a coach and stuff, and you can't go by the record anyhow. You got to prepare for that next team like they're capable of beating you anytime, because you had never, as the old cliche, you don't ever underestimate your opponent. And but I kind of feel like J.U. Blacksher's got a pretty good chance at this one, even though Clark County is pretty good. Should be a good game.
Yeah, J.U. Blacksher, like we said, at 3-4, they're at Clark County. That game's scheduled for Friday night at 7 o'clock, and that's going to mean a lot in that region, in Class 2A Region 1, because, J.U. Blacksher still, they have a shot at the playoffs. You got to finish in the top 4, and they're right there. So they need to win a couple more games to continue that trek as we get to playoff time, and they could find themselves in that 4 spot in Class 2A Region 1. As we look back into AISA football right now, 2A Region 2, the Escambia Academy Cougars, they're 3-4 on the year, 1-2 in their region. They play at Patrician Academy, who is 4-3 and 1-1. The Cougars beat Pickens Academy this last week at home, 46-14. This is a battle between Escambia and Patrician. This is going to be a battle for the 3rd spot in the 2A Region 2 of the AISA. Patrician is 1-1. Escambia Academy is 1-2. If the Cougars could pick up a win, they could even that record up between the two of them, and that would give them the tiebreaker between those two schools. Now, Patrician Academy's coming off a home loss. They lost to Lowndes Academy this past week by a score of 22-14. So here's looking. Just saying good luck to the Cougars of Escambia Academy as they look to pick up their own spot in the playoffs at the end of this season.
Yeah, Escambia Academy's got a good chance. Probably the thing that's in Patrician's favor is that they're playing at Butler, and it's just a long ride up there. And but EA, the thing that you and I were concerned about earlier this year and going back to last year, their offense has been able to score whoever they played. They just didn't have the defense quite where they wanted it. But the last few games, their defense has played really well. So I think EA's got a pretty good shot at this one. And, of course, that's who we'll be pulling for.
Moving now into Escambia County, Alabama. Well, we were just in Escambia at Escambia Academy, so we're in Escambia County anyway. But moving over into Atmore, the Escambia County High School Blue Devils, 4A Region 1, Escambia County High at 5-2, 2-2 in the region. They play. This is a big game in 4A Region 1 as they will take on the T.R. Miller Tigers at 4-2, 3-1 in the region. Escambia County, they kind of took one on the chin this past week as they had to travel to Jackson, got beat by Jackson 50-7 in that game. T.R. Miller beat a good Bayside Academy team 31-17, but both of these teams have 3 region games back to kind of go toward the end of the season. And so that whole 4A Region 1 is going to work itself out over the next 3 weeks as all these teams battle against each other. But this ought to be a good one right here. Of course, the rivalries there, Escambia, the Blue Devils and the Tigers, they don't G-haul very much, and that goes all the way back to it goes back forever, even before we were in school. But Escambia County High and
1921.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, those two schools just never have G-hauled very well, and that's going to be a big game right there. And that game, of course, will be that's going to be in Atmore at Escambia County High School, Herbert Barnes Stadium. So the Tigers are coming to town. That game's scheduled for Friday night. That's going to be a big one, Rick.
Yes, it is. This is kind of one of those games that's really going to tell you where you're at. I don't think a lot of people expected Atmore to beat Jackson because Jackson has trounced everybody they've played. Nobody's even come close to beating them. They're that good. They've got a quarterback that's you're going to be seeing playing on Saturdays here before long. But T.R. Miller, if they don't have many off years, but they're beatable. They've lost 2 games this year. They did beat a good Bayside Academy team, so I think this is a fairly even matchup. I think Escambia County's got a shot at it, but so does T.R. Miller. It's just going to be who wants it the most and who makes the fewest mistakes, almost like it is in every game. And good luck to both teams.
Yeah, good luck to both teams.
You know who we're pulling for? We're former Blue Devils.
Well, that's right. Yeah, we're former Blue Devils, so we got to kind of hang with the blue. But that's going to be a good ball game, and it will be entertaining. And what's going to be really great too is because you and I have done a couple of the Escambia County High School games on the radio this year. Is this will no doubtedly be the largest crowd that Atmore will entertain this year. The Atmore stands will be packed the way it was the homecoming game the night we were there, and that T.R. Miller with their Tigers, they travel very well.
Yes, they do. Both sides be a great place to go this coming Friday night, just like the game we're going to be doing, a rivalry game. I think T.R. Miller has played Atmore more than it has any other high school since they came into existence. With Atmore, they played Bay Minette a few more times than they played T.R. Miller, but that was that our two biggest rivals were Bay Minette and T.R. Miller. So it should be a really fun night. It should be nice weather, so good weather for everybody to get out and support their teams.
Yeah, that's going to be a fun one. Now we get to ours, and it's going to be a fun one as well. As a matter of fact, here's the way the competition goes for this is not only are the two schools in competition with each other, we got competing radio stations that are going to be, we're going to be broadcasting this thing at the same time. Of course, Rick and I will have the Neil broadcast on 105.9 WBZR in Atmore. That game we go on the air at 6:30. The game kicks off at 7 o'clock, and of course the Flomaton broadcast team of Attorney Ernie and White Shoes, they'll be on the radio at 6:45 and kick off then again at 7 o'clock, and they'll be on on WPFL 105.1. So just pick your poison. You know, if you want to ride with the Big Blue, then you go with 105.9. If you want to ride with the green and white of the Flomaton Hurricanes, then of course you can jump on 105.1, and the game will be there. And boy, Rick, we've been looking forward to this one. This game has been circled as it approaches. W.S. Neal's coming off a win at Cottage Hill. They won 42-13. It's a game we did on the radio this past Friday night. And like you said earlier, Flomaton, they're 3-1 in the region. Their only region loss came last week as they lost to Thomasville by a score of 21-7.
Yeah, Flomaton held a good Thomasville team in check. That's most of the game. W.S. Neal's got a good team. Of course, we've done all their games. Both of them coached by very good coaches. You got, a legend in Hugh Fountain at W.S. Neal, and you got a very good coach at Flomaton, Coach Vickery. It's just they're two very good football teams from two very fine towns, and it should be just a lot of fun. And once again, the W.S. Neal has a beautiful stadium. It's a great concessions, easy parking. So everybody should come out and support the teams. It'll be a beautiful night for football this Friday night.
Yeah, very well said. I mean, I'm looking forward to it, and it will definitely be one of the better games in this area in Southwest Alabama. That's going to be one of the better games to attend and watch on Friday night. Rick, let's kind of look at some things real quickly now as we look through. Let's kind of go region to region in the Alabama High School Athletic Association and talk about. We'll start in Class 7A because these regions are starting to work themselves out just a little bit. And, at the top of Class 7A Region 1, surprisingly enough, you've got Mary Montgomery, who I've said before, I always thought of them as a baseball school, but they're playing a little football, the Vikings are this year. They defeated Davidson by a score of 48-13. Baker, they defeated Alma Bryant this past week by a score of 35-6. Well, you've got Mary Montgomery and Baker. They have both already clinched playoff spots in Class 7A Region 1, but these two teams play each other on Friday night.
That's right. Around here, and like you said, you always think of Mary Montgomery as a baseball school, but they do occasionally have good football teams, and man, if they got one this year, they're talking about being maybe the best team that Mary Montgomery's had in like 40 or 50 years, things like that. Baker, they've got a very good football team. And, of course, they've had good football teams time to time at Baker, and they really have been on a roll this year. And so this is you wouldn't think of Baker ordinarily and Mary Montgomery playing for this region championship. But and it's not subtle that that's what's going to be happening this Friday night, but it's going to be pretty close. I mean, the only team that beat Baker is the number one ranked, I think the number one ranked, Dothan High. Out of Dothan, and they played them tough. Everybody else, Baker has just about trounced. So it should be a good football team. Mary Montgomery, of course, is undefeated and beat teams you wouldn't ordinarily see that they would beat. So I like Davidson. That Davidson's got a big school, and they beat them, and they beat Charles Henderson. I mean, we know Charles Henderson's good. So this Mary Montgomery team's good. So that should be a good game for sure.
Yeah, right now in Class 7A Region 1, if the playoffs were to start tonight, your four playoff teams would be Mary Montgomery, Baker, Daphne, and Foley. Now, this is interesting, too. You got a big game this week on the Eastern Shore as Daphne and Fairhope will tie up at Fairhope, and Foley will be taking on Alma Bryant as well. So Mary Montgomery, Baker, Daphne, Foley, those four teams would be in the playoffs in Class 7A Region 1 if the playoffs started right now. Looking down
that's probably the way it'll end too. Just knowing that, and being here and living in Mobile, I think that's exactly how it will end. Could be wrong though.
More than likely. All right, so as we move into 6A now, let's look at 6A. Of course, 6A is being led by Saraland, as we've referred to them commonly as the University of Saraland this year. They're 7-0, 5-0 in the region. They defeated Blunt by a score of 59-20. They will be playing Baldwin County this week. They will play Baldwin County at home. The second place team at 5-2, 4-1 in the region, Spanish Fort, they defeated St. Paul's this past week. They will be at McGill-Tulane. McGill-Tulane at 4-2, 3-1 in the region. They defeated Baldwin County this past week, 34-23. They will be playing Spanish Fort. And Theodore did not play this past week, but they will be taking on the Leopards of Blunt. In Class 6A Region 1, if the playoffs started tonight, your 4 playoff teams would be Saraland, Spanish Fort, McGill-Tulane, and Theodore. That's some pretty good football teams right there as well.
Yeah, and honestly, St. Paul's, it hadn't been decided on it for that 4th spot either. Or the 3rd spot. So I think it's safe to say Saraland and Spanish Fort are probably pretty safe in at this point based on who they've played. But you've got McGill, Tulane, Theodore, and St. Paul's all vying for that 4th spot, really, for sure. The 3rd and 4th spot, because St. Paul's is a very good football team, and they lost to Spanish Fort. And when Spanish Fort started a little slowly at the beginning of the year, but they've kind of got their wheels on tight now. And so St. Paul's is a good team. They could still squeeze in there too. But you're right, those top 4, Saraland, Spanish Fort, McGill, Tulane, Theodore, your top 4 as it stands right now. But there's still a little football to be played there. So St. Paul's could and possibly will still get in.
Moving to Class 5A Region 1. You've got Gulf Shores. Gulf Shores is 7-0. They're 5-0 in the region, and they're followed by UMS Wright, Viger, and Faith Academy. So if the playoffs started tonight, those would be your 4 playoff teams from Class 5A Region 1. Gulf Shores defeated Williamson this past week, 24-13. They will be at Alberta. Alberta's going to be a little outmatched in this one, as Alberta is like way down the list. So that game should comfortably go to Gulf Shores. UMS Wright defeated Alberta this past week 55-13. Now this is a big game right here. UMS Wright will be taking on BC Rain. And so that BC Rain is much improved. They're a very good football team. UMS Wright, BC Rain, that game will be Friday night. The Viger Wolves at 4-2, 3-2 in the region. They lost to Faith Academy this past week in a game that after our game the other night, I listened to the end of this one. And man, you talk about an incredible game that Faith Academy ended up picking up a win, 21-13. Viger will be taking on LaFleur this week. And Faith Academy at 4-3, 3-2 in the region. They defeated Viger, as we just said, 21-13. So Faith Academy gets a chance to heal up and rest. And resting this time of year could be bigger than picking up another win. It gives them a chance to get their legs back up under them and get set for the last few games of the season. But if the playoffs started tonight in Class 5A Region 1, it would be Gulf Shores, UMS Wright, Viger, and Faith Academy.
That's right. Faith, that was a huge upset. Faith's big back King, he made a run right there close to the end of regulation to put Faith ahead for good to win the game, and that was a big upset. Prior to that, Viger just lost the one game and had been rolling along. So that was a big upset. Congratulations to the Faith Academy Rams, where all my children went to school. So.
And you were talking about teams not to count out. Looking one step down from Faith Academy, you've got right there knocking on the door a very good football team at 4-2 with BC Rain. They're 2-2. So if they could knock off any of these teams that are up above them, then they could also slip into that number 4 spot. Still plenty of football to be played in the region. Yeah.
And you know what, Rick? If they do, and it could happen. I mean, my money would be on UMS Wright if I was a betting man. But BC Rain's got a good football team, got the beautiful new stadium, and just kind of getting their act together out there on Dolphin Island Parkway in that area out there. So if they did, then you would probably, and not probably, at least possibly, you would start getting into some tiebreaker scenarios with those teams. You could wind up with quite a few teams with a similar region one-loss record. So should be an interesting weekend to help sort things out in that region too.
Class 4A Region 1, led by the Jackson Aggies at 5-0. They're 4-0 in the region. They defeated Escambia County by a score of 50-7 this past week. They will be at Satsuma, so that'll be another win for Jackson. T.R. Miller at 4-2, 3-1 in the region. They defeated Bayside Academy 31-17. They will be at Escambia County High School in Atmore. We talked about that game earlier. St. Michael's at 4-3, 3-1 in the region. They defeated Orange Beach by a score of 49-3. St. Michael's will pick up another win this week. They go to Wilcox Central, and so that's going to be a gimme. Now, if they can get in and out of there over there, then that'll be a game that St. Michael's will win. And then, of course, the fourth place team right now, the Escambia County High School Blue Devils at 5-2. They're 2-2 in the region. They lost to Jackson, as we said, 50-7. They play T.R. Miller. Now, Escambia County, they've still got some big games coming up, so they've got to win. In looking at what I've looked at, you've got Bayside Academy down below them. They're also 2-2. You've got Satsuma, who's also 2-2. Now, more than likely, Satsuma's fixing to pick up another loss because they're going to play Jackson. So that's going to bump them down a notch. But Bayside Academy and Escambia County, the two of those schools right there, it's going to be who can win 2 out of 3 going toward the end as to who will pick up that number 4 spot in the region.
Yeah, that's right. And Escambia County is a much improved team, but they started 4-1 last year, wound up going 4-6. They're 5-1 this year, best record they've had since 2007 to start. So they've got T.R. Miller, and then they got Bayside Academy behind that. They need to win one of those games to make the playoffs. If let's say that they upset T.R. Miller this Friday night, then you're going to wind up with the same thing as we just talked about in the division above them, the classification above them. You could wind up with a bunch of teams with 3-3 records where they play the round robin of beating each other. If Escambia County is able to either beat Bayside or T.R. Miller and vice versa, so there could be some tiebreaker scenarios going on there too in Class 4A Region 1.
Let's go to Class 3A Region 1 now. Of course, the region's being led by Mobile Christian. We've seen Mobile Christian, and they are impressive, to say the least. I mean, they're huge up front. Defensively and offensively, they've got a good running game, good strong running game. Quarterback's good. They've got good wide receivers that are fast. And the thing about their wide receivers that I remember most is how tall they were. I mean, they've got some specimen wide receivers that they get open and they catch the football. And so Mobile Christian, they will be at Cottage Hill this week, so that'll be another win for Mobile Christian. We just got through seeing Cottage Hill. Cottage Hill is really going to be outmanned in this ball game. Now, a big game here, Thomasville at 5-0, 4-0, so they're tied with that top spot. Those two teams are going to have to play each other coming up here in just a few weeks. But Thomasville will be playing Excel at home this week. Of course, Thomasville defeated Flomaton 21-7 this past week. You got the Neal Blue Eagles. They defeated Cottage Hill, as we talked about. That was our game this past Friday night, 42-13. Neal is at home against the Flomaton Hurricanes this week. That's a game that we will have on the radio again. And there again, Flomaton is going to be there at Neal. So if everything was shut down tonight, your top 4 teams in Class 3A Region 1 would be Mobile Christian, Thomasville, W.S. Neal, and Flomaton. That top spot is still open, and it's going to be settled, I believe you said, in about 2 weeks between Mobile Christian and Thomasville. Yeah,
I think that would be my 4 top teams if I had to predict right now who's going to make it. Regardless of order, I think Mobile Christian's the best team. Flomaton did challenge Thomasville a little bit. Jackson, Alabama, and Mobile Christian, neither teams in 4A and 3A have been challenged this year. They've put like you said about Mobile Christian's receivers, they're tall, fast, and smart. They don't make any mistakes. Yeah, that just back over their whole team. But yeah, that'll be a good game in 2 weeks, but I think that's the 4 top teams in that area. I think that's unless some kind of big upset happens, that's probably your 4 playoff teams.
Moving down to Class 2A Region 1, 2A Region 1. Right now, the region is being led by St. Luke's. St. Luke's at 6-1, 4-0 in the region. They defeated Francis Marion 51-16. They're off this week. Clark County, they defeated Chickasaw 40-0. And so they will be playing J.U. Blackshear at home. Chickasaw is they lost to Clark County 40-0. They're at 3-4 and 2-2. They will be at Fruitdale. That'll be a win for Chickasaw there. And J.U. Blackshear in the number 4 spot right now. They lost to McKenzie this past week. A very good 1A football team. They lost to McKenzie on homecoming at Uri 38-16. They will be at Clark County, so that's a big game right there to settle on those. More than likely, Rick, and we've been talking about them because if you look at Washington County and Francis Marion in the last 2 spots, the 5 and 6 spot in that region, I would think that other than Clark County, if Clark County knocks off St. Luke's when the 2 of them play, it very well could be Clark County, St. Luke's, Chickasaw, and J.U. Blackshear, the 1 through 4 teams in that Class 2A Region 1 region area.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement with you. I think you're looking at the top 4 as they stand. That's probably your 4 playoff teams, in my humble opinion.
And as we talked about, looking at Clark County, you can't look at their record at 3-4 and judge anything by the football team. That's a good stinking football team. Yeah,
I agree wholeheartedly.
Let's move now to Class 1A, Region 1. Of course, you've got up there on Wildcat Hill over there across the river in Milry, the 6-1 Milry Wildcats. Their only loss of the year came to Centronale. They defeated Washington County by a score of 57-0. They will play J.F. Shields at home this week. You got the Leroy Bears right behind them. Of course, these 2 teams, both Milry and Leroy, they're going to meet up here before it's all over with, and they're going to play each other. Both teams are 3-0 in the region. Of course, Leroy defeated J.F. Shields by a score of 46-8. They will be at Southern Choctaw this week. You got Choctaw County at 2-3 and 2-2 in the region. 2-3 overall, 2-2 in the region. They defeated Southern Choctaw 14-12 in a nail-biter. They will play McIntosh this week, and then you've got that number 4 spot, McIntosh, at 2-5. 2-2, they defeated Fruitdale by a score of 34-0. Of course, they will be at Choctaw County. So you've got the number 3 and number 4 teams in the region taking on each other this week. Yeah. So that's going to kind of start working itself out. And then if you look at that top spot, Milry and Leroy are yet to play each other. So one of those 2 teams is going to emerge victorious in that game and take control of that region.
That's right. They play each other, just as we were talking about earlier with Mobile Christian and this team. These 2 teams will meet on the 20 in 2 weeks, basically. McIntyre, a little over 2 weeks. Leroy and Milry will meet. So, and I if you look at their schedules, I think they'll both be undefeated too. So it should be a humdinger.
Well, Rick, that's going to about do it for us. We've covered everything kind of that we wanted to talk about today. We talked about all the teams in Monroe and Escambia County, Alabama, primarily in Class 3A and 4A Region 1. We've gone through the playoff scenarios from 7A all the way down to 1A in the Alabama High School Athletic Association. Talked about all the games, the way things could work out in those Region 1s and each respective thing. So now as we are at midweek here we are on Wednesday. We're coming up on Friday night and another weekend of exciting high school football action here on the Gulf Coast. So excited, can't wait to get our game in. And man, there's going to be some good football all over our area, and it looks like the weather's going to play a big role in it. It's going to be great football weather this weekend, so just everybody needs to get out and enjoy their favorite team.
That's right. After this little tropical disturbance type thing kind of gets on out of the way, I think most of the teams that are playing this weekend will have a nice, pleasant evening Friday night to play football. So.
Well, Rick, thank you so much for joining me again today, like you always do. And of course, buddy, I'll see you Friday afternoon, and we'll be loaded up in the vehicle and headed to East Bruton to cover our game with the Neil Blue Eagles. And that game, like we said, will be on 105.9 WBZR Atmore. And of course, we thank you so much for joining us. We call this the SportzMoose Media Podcast. We do it each and every week. We try to put it out for you. We cover high school football in Southwest Alabama. And Rick and I want to thank you for joining us. And don't forget that you can find the SportzMoose Media Podcast wherever you find your podcasts.
Yep. Thank you, Ricky. I appreciate it. It's been my pleasure.